Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Still on our topic, we're now joined over the phone by Dr. Tamer Rady, the professor and head, actually, of the Faculty of Economics at Ain Shams University. Dr. Rady, can you hear us, sir?
I can hear you well. How are you doing?
I'm very well, sir. Dr. Rady, we're talking about the industrial sector that has contributed about 17.1% of the national GDP of Egypt. Now, how much of the this development and progress of the industrial sector here in Egypt is really allocated or referred to the public sector, and how much is for the private sector?
Well, you know, it's a whole mixture of both, but the majority, of course, is probably the contribution of the private sector nowadays. All the infrastructure that was going on within the last year, and despite all the COVID market situation, still the industrial sector was able to recover. And it's evident from the accounting books from so many different firms, and then it was evident at the national level that some of the highest contribution to Egyptian GDP for the last periods came in from the industrial sector. Mainly, of course, the participation of the private sector is the most appreciated and the most important at the time being.
Dr. Rady, now we're talking about the industrial sector, and there's also a lot of talk about the exports versus the imports. We've been really trying to decrease our imports and increase our exports, thinking and feeling and believing this would be a great boost for the Egyptian industry and the Egyptian productivity. How much did we achieve that since we started our economic reform program? Because as soon as we started, a lot of things have changed. The devaluation of the Egyptian pound, lifting subsidies, a lot of measures. How much do you think we've achieved in terms of increasing our exports and decreasing our imports?
Well, to start with, you know, and from a great economical, ideological point of view, what Egypt did in 2016 of liberating the prices of the dollar, floating the currency, has contributed a whole much to all the gross on exports and to the reduction in imports that we have witnessed lately. This is the automatic balancing. This is the way that's written in the textbooks to achieve a more balanced trade and to encourage exports by making your exports cheaper to the world, and to limit imports by making it a little bit more expensive to those who import. And indeed, we have witnessed this. This has been the first part of the success. The second part of the success is the wide investment in infrastructure, in ports, in roads, in establishing new cities, and in supporting small and medium industries by dedicating special zones in which young entrepreneurs can rent for cheap, ready-made, ready with all the clearances required, and start business right away. So the second half of that success comes because businesses started to feel safe. Businesses started to find infrastructure to operate in, and they found a whole lot of support from the Central Bank of Egypt when it came to the COVID effects. So indeed, you put those two together, you know, a good economy under the reform program, a good infrastructure investment, and an encouragement of the industrial sector, and the results were clear. You ended up having a contribution of the industry to GDP, which is remarkably high compared to the rest of the nations and compared to our, to the time period in which we had such difficult market conditions.
Dr. Rady, you've mentioned the small and medium enterprises. Now, over the past few years, we've been talking about encouraging the SMEs, trying to find ways and strategies, incubators, risks management for the SMEs, really trying to push it forward. Now we're talking about it as really an integral part of, one of the most integral parts of the Egyptian economy. The growth of the SMEs over the past few years, is this a satisfactory progress and development for the SMEs? Do we need to move even faster? Was it a pace that exceeded our expectations for the Egyptian economy?
Well, indeed, it has been planned for. Reform comes in phases. Now, phase one is over, and the phase two is supposed to focus way much more on small and medium industries. And the key to that is to provide an environment suitable for young entrepreneurs to operate. One of those things would be to allocate zones, some special economic zones in which they can, well, not economic, just geographical zones in which they can allocate, in which they will find things turnkey ready, in which much of the suffering that we have seen in the past, in which a young entrepreneur would have to wait a longer period to get work permits and all types of different permits for his little shop to operate. Now this has by far is planned to go. The time required to do that would be very minimal, and the economies of scale of having all those young entrepreneurs working together in the same neighborhoods, especially in a lot of southern governorates in which production is really cheap compared to the rest of the nation. You'll have also by the Red Sea governorates, you'll have it by the Mediterranean. The government's plan to allocate all those zones is a very encouraging sign for the next phase of reform, focusing mainly on small and medium industries. Second thing is that that makes us happy is that you see young entrepreneurs willing to work. The expectations for the future is much better, and you hear among all the young ones all those great ideas and seeking great opportunities for the future. The expectations makes a huge difference as well.
Dr. Rady, when we speak of SMEs and we speak about entrepreneurship, now, do you feel that there is a space for exploring different sectors through these industries, having maybe not just purely Egyptian SMEs, but also can these SMEs grow enough to be able to cooperate with foreign industries and foreign companies and foreign investment institutions?
Well, by definition of a small and a medium enterprise, the international part of it would be probably focused more on exports. If you look at places in the south, for example, and places in governorates that are good in producing furniture, this furniture is mainly dedicated to exports. Medium industries and large industries are encouraged heavily to cooperate, of course. Egypt is now open for foreign investment, and with all what's going on, the participation of foreign investment is guaranteed to expand in the next few months, in the next few years. The outlook for that is very hopeful. As Egypt needs small and medium industries, we also have been encouraging quite a whole lot large industries as well. Economic development would require both to work together. Focusing on the large ones, that's real economic development, big industrial sector. Focusing on the small one, that's great for exports, great for unemployment to be reduced, and so on.
Dr. Tamer Rady, head of the Faculty of Economics at Ain Shams University, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's take a look at the industrial sector, the biggest contributor to the Egyptian economy. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt was one of the few countries that recorded an economic growth during the coronavirus crisis, which amounted to 3.57% during 2019-2020. Minister of Trade and Industry Naveen Gama said that the industrial sector is the locomotive of the economic growth in Egypt and contributed about 17.1% of the GDP in 2019-2020, compared to about 16.4% in the previous year, and thus became the largest contributor to the Egyptian economic growth compared to other economic sectors. The minister added that the manufacturing sector achieved a positive growth rate during 2019-2020 of about 1.4%, although it was less than what it achieved in the previous year, which recorded 2.8%, but remained positive in the year of the pandemic as the reflection of the measures taken to strengthen the industrial sector during the crisis. Gama explained that thanks to the success of the first phase of the economic reform program, Egypt launched the second phase of the National Structural Reform Program in 2021, which focuses on raising the competitiveness of of 3 main sectors, including manufacturing, agriculture, communications and information technology, to increase their contribution to the GDP. She stressed that Egypt had succeeded in achieving any positive economic indicators during the coronavirus thanks to the economic reform program that it pursued since 2016 and the measures it took to confront the pandemic, which amounted to about 541 measures from March 2019 to May 2021. With regard to industry and trade, the minister pointed out that the second phase of the structural reform programs aims to raise investment rates in the manufacturing sector in a sustainable manner, increase its participation in the gross domestic product, localize and deepen industry, develop supply chain and integrate at higher stages in global and regional value chain.